Hello, today is Wednesday, October 14th, 2015, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing today? I just want to tell you that it is a beautiful fall day out here in New York. We have some yellow and orange, beautiful bright leaves out there, and the beautiful sun is shining bright in the sky right now. Not to say that we haven't had rain the last couple days and those temperatures have been falling into the 40s, but hey, it's fall. We're going from the upper 70s down to the 50s, and boy, does that wreak havoc on people's health. Anyways, we have a great show in store for you today. We're very fortunate to have International Center for UFO Abduction researcher David M. Jacobs with us today. I think it's going to be a phenomenal interview. First, a little glimpse into the missing persons files. I have a sad update for you today, and these are my least favorite ones to bring you guys. I did, on one of my last shows, I did a missing persons on a Joseph Brunn, and there's a sad update. Wright County Sheriff's deputies have recovered the body of Joseph Brunn, an adult from the Mississippi River. The body was found Thursday at 11:30 a.m. by volunteers who were helping in the search for the 23-year-old who went missing from the area since early Saturday morning. He was last seen at about 2 a.m. on Saturday walking from the Boondocks Bar to the Holiday Inn in Tesco. According to the Help Find Joe Brunn Facebook page, over 4,000 volunteers were taking part in the search effort. ATVs and horses were being used by a group to look for Brunn. The body was 300 yards south of the Highway 101 bridge and was taken to the nearest medical examiner's office for an autopsy. The circumstances surrounding the death of this individual is under investigation by the Wright County Sheriff's Office. Again, this is a hard thing to bring you guys when they find a body of one of our missing people. But I am so thankful to those volunteers who took the time out of their lives, their precious time out of their precious lives, to look for him and find him so that this family could have some closure. And I want to tell this family from info2rail to you, God bless you. You're in our thoughts and prayers, and we're sorry for your loss. The next one is a missing Texas woman, Ricky McIlvray, age 28, from Midland, Texas, worked as a Midland Independent School District special education teacher before she disappeared on September 20th, 2015. She does not have her own car or a cell phone. McIlvray is described as slim, about 5'3", with dark brown eyes and brown curly hair. She sometimes straightens her hair and wears glasses. Anyone with any information on her location, please call the Midland County Sheriff's Office at 432-688-4620. You can go on my info2rail page, my Google Sites page, and I post pictures of these people. So come on, guys, let's stand together as a world here, and let's find our missing people. Whether it's a sad update or whether we bring them home safely, we've got to bring closure to these families who are going through such a rough time with missing somebody. It's got to be devastating. We're going to take a short break now, and when we return, we will have David Jacobs with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with David Jacobs. David Jacobs, Ph.D., is Associate Professor of History at Temple University, specializing in 20th century American history and culture. He began researching the controversy over unidentified flying objects in America in the mid-1960s and has amassed over 35 years of primary research data and analytical hypothesis on the subject. Dr. Jacobs has written and delivered many articles, papers, and addresses on the subject of UFO abduction and has been a consultant to the major UFO organizations. In recent years, he has concentrated on ascertaining the proper methodological techniques for the hypnosis and therapy of the abductees. Hello, David, and welcome to info2rail, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Can you start out by telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got started and what you do?
Well, I'm a retired professor of history, 20th century U.S. history from Temple University, and I retired in 2011. And I started teaching there in '75, although I taught at the University of Nebraska for a year beforehand. And my passion for most of my adult life has been UFOs and then UFOs and abductions, for reasons that are not clear in my own brain. But I wound up writing my doctoral dissertation at the University of Wisconsin-Madison on the controversy over unidentified flying objects in America, which was a straight history book, but all about UFOs and how the government and national UFO societies and the lunatic fringe and them and Hollywood and everybody else, the journalism community, how did they approach the introduction of an anomalous phenomenon, something that nobody could figure out what it was. Obviously the residue that remained unidentified, and after I got my Ph.D., I continued doing my passion, and I got interested in the abduction phenomenon through the pioneer researcher Bud Hopkins, who became my closest friend for the next almost 30 years. And I've published 5 books on the subject of UFOs and abductions. So the first one was my dissertation. The second, and then I wrote a book called Secret Life, which took a person on a kind of typical, common abduction event, minute by minute almost. And I then wrote a book called The Threat, which suggested that this phenomenon was not as happy as I thought it might be, in that Hopkins had discovered that these beings were making babies, hybrid babies. They were taking sperm and eggs from men and women, and they were installing, so to speak, a fetus into the woman and then withdrawing it after about 10 or 11 weeks. And the resulting hybrid, as he called them, looked sort of a cross between human and alien. Then when I wrote The Thread, I discovered that there were more and more different types of hybrids. Some looked more human, some looked less human, and so forth. And each one, they had a lot of tasks to perform. So I did do a certain concentration on the hybrids. In The Thread also, which came out there was something that was said that puzzled me. People were reporting that these beings, mainly gray aliens, were saying that soon there was going to be a change. Soon there was a change. It was going to be wonderful. It was going to be great. Everybody would be happy. Everybody would know his place. And the change, I figured, might be entering into the society in some way, infiltrating into the society. Nobody really knew. But the question soon was bothered me. So I asked abductees, what does soon mean? What do they mean by soon? And of course, nobody knew. Absolutely nobody knew. Because soon, when they say it, could mean 1,000,000 years from now. It could mean 10 minutes from now. It's impossible to tell. Now, then I went on to publish an edited book with the University of Kansas Press called UFOs and Abductions, Challenging the Borders of Knowledge. And the latest book is called Walking Among Us, and it is about hybrids who are, in fact, living here. Now, the reason I call it Walking Among Us was because people have asked me over hundreds of times, do you think they're walking among us? Do you think they're living here? Do you think, that they're here? And I think I know a hybrid, and maybe I am a hybrid and all that sort of stuff. And I love that question because I got to say, absolutely not. There's no evidence whatsoever that hybrids are walking among us. Now it's my least favorite question. Because when I answered it beforehand, I felt sane. I felt like I was actually saying something that was, not crazy. I love that question. Now, I can't say absolutely not anymore. I have to say yes. and it always embarrasses me. But when you read the book, Walking Among Us, you'll see that there's a logical progression that people have been discussing, and so that's what I'm all about these days, which is how are these hybrids settling in? Who's helping them? How are they? How is this done? What are the procedures for doing this? And what is the bureaucracy for doing this? And how do abductees fit into this and that sort of thing? And that's what the book's about.
I know there's been a lot of controversy of whether or not the aliens actually get here and visit us. I've done a lot of interviews, and I guess I've had a little bit of one side and the other. I've had some people say, yes, they're definitely visiting us and abducting people, and I have others say that there's no possible way they could. I guess my question is, I mean, how long would it take them to get from their planet where they're coming from to get here to us if it would take so long for us to get to them?
Yeah, that's a question that scientists always are grappling with. The answer is it doesn't matter. It is of no concern. It should not ever be discussed. The reason is that our technology is very, very, very young. Even if you claim technology began 5,000 years ago, which it didn't, because most of our technology is just the last couple hundred years. But even if you say 5,000 years, in cosmic or geologic time, that is nothing. It is zero. It is no time. It's a laugher. If somebody else out there has technology just a tiny bit more advanced than ours, it would be like magic. They found a way to get here. It doesn't matter how the concept of not being able to get here is just nonsensical. There's only one question that has to be solved, and that has to be answered, and that is, are they here or not? I don't care how they got here. It doesn't matter. It's only, are they here or not? And a lot of scientists really get hung up on this for reasons that I can't imagine. To me, it is so mind-bogglingly stupid that I can't grasp the nonsensicality of it. The question is, are they here or not? It doesn't matter how they got here, nor does it matter where they come from.
I think that the reason the question is asked so often is so we can figure out if they can get here, how we could go there and visit where they are.
Not going to happen. Years and years ago, J. Allen Hynek, who was the Air Force consultant for UFOs from 1948 to 1969, and became the main UFO researcher in the country. As he started out as a debunker or a skeptic, and he converted because he was smart enough to understand that the evidence was serious. In trying to deal with that question, he said, well, to look at their technology, to figure out how they're doing it, would be like showing Benjamin Franklin a color TV. There's a phrase that's never used anymore. Showing and asking him, how does it work?
Right.
And the answer is, even though Benjamin Franklin was a legitimate scientific genius, he would never have known how to do it because there's too many levels of knowledge that have accrued leading to how a television works. You know what I mean? And so, and he doesn't have the exposure to that. And it's like saying, well, how can they get here from there? There's too many levels of knowledge, almost certainly, we don't know, but too many levels of knowledge that are that need to be learned before we can do that, because our technology just began. See what I mean? The logic of these questions. Now, there's another question that you said comes up quite a bit, another concern or a question, and that is, are they visiting here? And the answer is no. They are not visiting. Visit is a non-starter. This is a phenomenon that has been going on since most of the 20th century we can say with a relatively high degree of certainty, and perhaps even into the last quarter of the 19th century, which we can say with less certainty. But the key, and it's intergenerational. That is to say, if a person is an abductee and gets married to a non-abductee, and they have two children, both children will be abductees. And when they get married to non-abductees, since most people are not abductees, then all of their children will be abductees, and so on and so forth. So what you get is a constant expansion, probably keeping up with the population expansion, but a constant expansion of abductees and therefore abductions. And abductions occur starting in early childhood and going all the way through into old age. They stop somewhere in old age, maybe age 75, maybe 80, something like that. But people do not describe seeing other abductees on board a UFO who are elderly. Not only that, but this is a global phenomenon. The United States does not have a corner on the abduction market. This is all around the country. It's in Japan, it's in China, it's in India, it's in the West African country of Mali. I'm saying countries that me and colleagues have examined in terms of abductees, and South Africa, and you name it. All through Latin America, and that bizarre country up north, Canada, and it's everywhere. It's all around the world. So this is not a visiting situation. This is a situation where these beings are involved in a program. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's goal-directed. And this is something that I discovered, that I figured out in 1998 in The Threat. And the goal is to ultimately, from what they say, is to ultimately fit into our societies, fit into humanity, blend in, and we don't know what afterwards. Now, there is a difference between them and us. Even though they fit into the society, they blend in, they go for the average. Anybody with a giant nose, for example, is culled from the herd. Anybody who's 6'4" is culled from the herd. They go for the average. All these hybrids, or hybrids as I call them, because they are hybrid in every way. They have one thing that we don't have, that all aliens have. All of them, whatever shape or variety, they all have in this program. And that is, they can control us neurologically, make us think anything, make us do anything, make us see anything that they want, and we cannot control them. That makes us a second-class species and them a first-class species. That's the part I really don't like.
What do you think makes certain people abductees and other people never even encounter a UFO in their life?
Right. Well, abductees, of course, can encounter UFOs every time they're abducted, mostly, and unless the abduction takes place in their house and they're just teaching a hybrid how to do something, which is still an abduction, but they're not on board a UFO. But people see UFOs flying about at random. It's far less random than we ever imagined in all these, since 1947 when people started looking at the phenomenon. If somebody is out in their backyard and they see a UFO hovering above the trees right near them, they're there for a reason, and that UFO is there for a reason. That's almost certainly an abduction event. If you're sitting in the stands of a football game and a UFO flies over, that is not an abduction event. It has to do with proximity. It has to do with whether you're an abductee or not. And if you're not an abductee, seeing a UFO means you're not involved with the abduction phenomenon. But in fact, because the abduction phenomenon is so widespread, There's literally millions of people. I even to say that is crazy, but literally millions of people in the United States are abductees. We should be seeing UFOs all over the place, all the time, everybody, and but we don't.
What do you think makes them choose certain people, though? I mean, do they study a specific person for a while before they become abductees, or do they just choose them at random?
We do not know that. I only have one commentary on that by a person who was talking with a hybrid on how it began, but nobody else has said anything like that, so it's not quite evidence for me yet. So the best thing I can say is that we don't really know how it began, who was selected. My best guess is it was random. And because it's everybody and with every kind of blood type. Some people say, oh, only Rh negative. No. It's every kind of blood type. It's every kind of person. It's the good, the bad, the ugly. It's everyone and everything. No, there's nothing distinguishing abductees from anybody else. And of course, that's what they want. They want the average. And so we don't know how it began. Now, this is a phenomenon that's real or it's mental. There's nothing in the middle. It's psychological or it's happening. You can't be mistaken. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't abducted. I thought that those 4 hours of missing time, which I can't account for, was an abduction, but in fact, well, I don't know what it was, but it's a mistake. You can't say that. It's either mental, you're inventing it in some way for whatever reason, doesn't matter, or it's happening. Therefore, it's all mental.
Are there certain people who get abducted who don't have any recollection of in their lifetime that they were ever abducted?
Only about 95%. That's my best guess. But the point is that if this were mental, people would invent the reasons for why the abduction phenomenon began and who was selected. They're inventing everything else. Why wouldn't they invent that? See what I mean?
Yeah.
But nobody knows. Nobody knows. So anyway, I'm sorry. I threw off in mid-sentence there almost.
No, that's okay. I mean, this is all interesting. This is stuff that I know that I'm interested in. I know my listeners, a lot of my listeners are very interested in this stuff because it seems that it went from something that not many people ever really discussed, and now it's taken over the internet and it's taken over everything.
I hope so. It goes through phases. The UFO phenomenon itself was headline news in the 1950s. That's literally true. And now virtually all major newspapers do not carry any UFO sightings whatsoever, no matter what. Every once in a year, let's just say, you'll see a UFO article from a major newspaper. Local newspapers will carry them every once in a while, regional newspapers, but not the Washington Post or the New York Times or the LA Times or whatever. They just think it's nonsense. Back in the old days, in the 50s and 60s, scientists and academics used to be interested in this subject. Now, it's just nobody, nothing. It's zero. Not only is there no interest by academics and scientists, they're outwardly hostile to the subject, more so than I've ever seen in my life. And you got to remember, I've been looking into this subject since 1965, 66. And but now it's just awful. Here's an interesting story. I began teaching at university in 1975, and I started in 1970. It was 1977 of teaching the first and only course ever on UFOs, abductions, and American society through the American Studies program. And it was a regular course, 4 graduations, 3 credits, upper level course actually. That was the only course in the United States to this date, to this minute, that was a course about this subject. And And I began to get lots of publicity because of my books and this and that. I got more publicity than any other person at Temple University outside of the sports program. And the number of scientists who came to my office, who would come to my office and ask me, what's this all about? What's going on here? Why are you crazy like we all think you are? Or something like that. The amount of those scientists adds up to a grand total of 0. None. I was there for 36 years. 0. Nobody was. It was just considered downright nuts by the 1970s, and remained that way, and even continued on that way. So it's just a bad situation. So if it's all over the internet, that's fine with me. But you got to be careful, because everybody and his parakeet is an expert in UFOs and abductions, and you got to be very, very careful about what you hear and all this ruminating, for example, about reptilians here, reptilians there, biblical reptilians, and serpents and alligators and all that sort of stuff. You have to take that not with a grain of salt, but with a gallon of salt.
Now, do you believe that Roswell actually happened?
Well, I'm not an advocate of Roswell, and I hate to say that, because when I say that, all I do is make enemies. The evidence, even though I've read some very good stuff about Roswell, and Tom Carey and Don Schmidt wrote an excellent book about Roswell, and really suggestive stuff. But the problem for me as a historian is that if there actually was a Roswell crash, and there might have been for all I know, but if there were, the government would have reacted very, 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 very differently about the subject throughout history. And we'd see a whole different world of government activity dealing with the UFO phenomenon because of that crash. It would be considered a direct threat to national security, and therefore things would happen. The constitutionally mandated, basically, that the president is to protect the United States, the Air Force, but has to protect the United States from attack by air, and all that sort of stuff. And we'd see massive programs of studying the subject. We'd see debriefing of abductees going on every minute of the day. And we'd see it around the world, because other countries would be on notice too. But that just has not come to fruition, and that's what sort of stops me. Now, people say, well, it's happening in secret, but we know after all these years, we know. And but there's now there's counter arguments. So there's two people say, well, people on their deathbed have said that the government that Roswell was real and there was a crash, and I can't say no. I can't say no. There might have been, However, it leads this plus other things lead to government conspiracy theories and all that. And when it comes to government conspiracy theories, this is the way I think. I think that if the government has managed to keep a lid on this thing, and if there was a crash of Roswell and a crash here and a crash there and here and there and everywhere and all that, and if they've kept a lid on it, and if it's the greatest secrecy program of all time of any country in the entire universe, that's fine with me. That's okay. I would jump for joy. I love it. That's music to my ears, because at least they're doing something about it. At least they're studying it. I don't care whether they're keeping it from me. I don't care whether they're keeping it secret from the world. All I care about is for them dealing with it in some way. And so if that's happening, fine. I'll be left in the dark. That's okay. That's the best I can muster these days.
I think for a lot of us, we wonder exactly how we can, what we're looking for when we're looking for a UFO. A lot of us will say it looked like a plane, but it didn't have any sound. Or some of us will say it had strange lights, but, I'm out there all the time. I'm somebody who looks up in the sky all the time. I'm interested in chemtrails. I'm interested in UFOs. I'm interested in planets. I love all that stuff. And I'm out there looking up all the time. And I've seen some pretty crazy things looking up, but I'm not even really quite sure what I'm seeing. So I don't know if I've ever
Right.
seen a UFO.
You have to get an experienced UFO researcher to dissect exactly what was seen and all that. You have to have a sort of a complete account of it. And there's the Mutual UFO Network, which is active in every state in the nation, and they'll look into things like that for people who see UFOs. And you know, the problem here is that UFO sightings have been ubiquitous since we can with absolute certainty, at least since the Foo Fighters of 1943, 44, and 45, and the Ghost Rockets of 1946, and the UFO sightings of 1947, and on and on. So they've been around for a long time, and we learned a tremendous amount about them, and we learned their effects on if they're low level. High-level lights in the sky at night are the weakest kinds of sightings, obviously, but a low level, an object landed on the ground in the middle of the daytime, that's a high-level sighting. But we know, but books have been written about their effects on electrical and mechanical devices, on automobiles and so forth, their effects on animals, their effects on the environment, their effects on the ground if one lands, how heavy is it, compaction effects, that sort of stuff. And by the late 1970s, almost everything we could know about the outside shells of objects, their maneuvers, their color changes, how long people saw them, the kind of witnesses who saw them, the priest, the minister, and the rabbi, all that. We knew all that stuff by the late 1970s. This was already standard knowledge. And so I think that people, a lot of people drifted into government conspiracy theories then, because at least that was an avenue to examine, how much did the government know and when did they know it, which is fine with me. But it's not actually UFO research. It's government research, which, like I said, is fine. I did nothing but government research. I did a lot of government research for my dissertation and then book. But a lot of people who just look for UFOs, and what they're doing is if they see a UFO, something zigzagging in the sky and then flying straight up or something like that. They're adding to the thousands and tens of thousands and even millions of reports of sightings in the world, and and that's important, because the more evidence we have, the more the better it is to present to scientists or academics or anybody else who wants to study the subject.
Are people? Is there somebody out there who's actually doing hypnosis on these abductees and actually getting information about what they've gone through while they were abducted?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the only way it can be done. What happens is that people who are abductees are the ones who have bleed-through memories and who are conscious of odd events. In other words, here's an odd event, and this is an actual event. People, here's a couple driving down the road. It's about 10:30 at night or something like that, and and everything is fine, everything is nice, everything is good. The wife, who's sitting in the front seat, says to her husband, "Take a look at that." And he looks over through the windshield, and there's this bizarre-looking light in the sky at night that is, in fact, performing odd maneuvers and this and that, and it's flying across the road from the left or right and doing all these odd things. And they both look at it and say, "Wow, what in the hell is that? What is that?" Suddenly, there's a flash, and they look at each other and they say, "What just happened? What just happened?" And they continue driving, and then immediately they notice it's not 10:30 anymore; it's 12:30 at night. and they have no knowledge of what happened to them. They don't know whether they saw a UFO or what. They just keep driving, and yet that can't happen in the world in which we live without the abduction phenomenon. That is just not possible. It's two people. It's not like the husband saying, "Oh my God, well, it's already 12:30," and the wife says, "Well, sure, we've been driving for the past 2 hours. What's the matter with you? You know,
right?
You got a anyway." So you can't. That's just not going to happen unless it's the abduction phenomenon. It's the only thing that will account for that. And as far as I know, one person maybe, but two people no. So most people do not know that they're abductees. They can't tie it to the abduction phenomenon because this is a clandestine phenomenon. It's secretive. Without secrecy, there is no abduction phenomenon. It is stopped in its tracks. If a woman finds herself pregnant and there's no particular reason in this universe why she should be pregnant, because there seems to be, for me, maybe I'm wrong, that there's a little process that goes forward to get somebody pregnant. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if that doesn't happen and the person is pregnant, then there's something very strange going on. And by the time they realize that this is really bizarre, they're not pregnant anymore. And they say to themselves, oh, just a mistake. Sorry about that. I guess the doctor who took a blood test and said I was pregnant was wrong. And the early pregnancy test that you can buy at a drugstore, that was wrong too. That's just a mistake. Never mind. And that happens all the time, where doctors will tell women, well, you were pregnant, but the fetus must have been absorbed into your system. Well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a gynecologist, I'm not an obstetrician, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems to me that the absorption of a fetus, which is in fact treated as a foreign body in the woman's uterus, that being absorbed in fetal state into the system, that we'd have pictures of that, X-rays,
right,
sonograms,
yeah,
once in a while. To the best of my knowledge, that it does not exist. What doctors will say, well, then you must have had a miscarriage. You must have had a miscarriage. Well, generally speaking, when women have a miscarriage, there's cramping, there's pain, there's blood, there's excretion of fetal material, and women will say, well, no, I didn't have any miscarriage. There's nothing like that. What are you talking about? I said, well, you must have had it on the toilet. And the woman says, well, before, when I flush the toilet, I looked in there every time just to make sure everything is okay, and I think I would have noticed the cramping followed by blood in the toilet and all that, And I can't tell you how many women have told me this, that they've been through this. But in fact, doctors just are puzzled by it, and they just make up sometimes an explanation because they know there must be an explanation, and it must have been a miscarriage because they were, in fact, pregnant. So this is standard abduction stuff. And Now, the question is anybody doing hypnosis out there? Yes, there are some people. There used to be lots. Now there are very much fewer as everybody, including me, gets older, and some people just see that it takes up too much time. I've been doing hypnosis with abductees since in 1986. I got interested in UFOs in 82, and it took me 4 years to start doing hypnosis. And I wound up making every mistake a human being can make doing hypnosis, thinking I was doing the right thing. And luckily, I learned about these mistakes early on, and I went to correct them. And even then, I made mistakes. So, but It's difficult to do. I didn't charge. I don't know whether I'm stopping now or not, to tell you the truth. But I don't charge money for anything. No money exchanges hands. No, people can come as many times as they want, once or 100 times, as far as I'm concerned. It's their lives, not mine necessarily. And so it's a situation whereby most people who do it are certified hypnotherapists. Now, you have to be careful. There's people who are really good at it, like Yvonne Smith in Los Angeles, certified hypnotherapist, and there's Kathy Martin, who's in Florida, and there's Jed Turnbull, who's in New York City, and there's some other ones around too. But a lot of them have an agenda. They think that it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it's new agey and it's spiritual and it's transformational and it's religious and it's you just go on and on into the world into a world that has nothing to do with the abduction phenomenon whatsoever, and they do hypnosis, but I mean, in my opinion, and they're going to be angry at me, of course, for saying this, in my opinion, they don't know what they're doing. They're asking the wrong questions. I've read lots and lots of transcripts from people who are like that, and I'm just astounded at the kind of questions that they ask that they shouldn't be asking. And not only that, but I spent an average of 5 hours with each abductee who came to my home office because I had the time to do it. As a professor, I might teach on Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. I might have to do stuff on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I still could make time, that 5-hour time, for an abductee. And so I looked at 1,150 different abduction events, and with about 150 people, which isn't that many. But then again, I could track them sometimes for years to see change over time, to see how things are the same or different and all that. So I had very good fortune in being able to do that. And most people can't do that. Most certified hypnotherapists are on a schedule. You know, they have a couple of hours, and then there's somebody else that has an appointment, and this and that. They just can't do that. And so it's problematic. And what you need is a society of people who will do this, who will learn from each other, who will have the time, maybe retired people, I don't know, people who are fabulously wealthy, that would be good, if they didn't have to work, or whatever, to look at this subject with knowledge beforehand of what's come beforehand, and who don't have an agenda, who are agenda free. That would be wonderful. That's just not going to happen in my lifetime anyway. Not going to happen. That's a pipe dream of mine.
I wonder how many of these hybrids we come in contact with daily, and we have absolutely no idea.
That's correct, and the answer is I don't know how many hybrids are here. All I know is that people began to tell me about dealing with hybrids living here, who I call hybrids, because to differentiate from all other hybrids, of which there are many different stages, who have tasks, some of which are involved with the bureaucracy of bringing hybrids here to live here in apartments of all things. There has to be somebody who gets the apartment first in an area which would be good for hybrids and near an abductee and all that, and so and there's people who they're security hybrids who make sure that they're safe at all times and who make sure that the abductee is not telling anyone about it and is still in the program, you know, and keeping their mouths shut, so to speak, if they remember anything. And of course, most of them don't remember anything anyway. And there's other kinds of hybrids. So the hybrids from moving in start out at around the ages of 17 to 23, something like that. They don't know how old they are. In other words, they were not born. They spent the first couple of months in utero, and then they were taken out and put in basically gestation tanks filled with nutrients. And then they're removed from the tanks that I've discussed before in Secret Life and The Threat and so forth. They're removed from the tanks, and then they're dealt with by abductees who handle them and feed them and this and that and all sorts of stuff. But
so basically,
they don't know how old they are.
So
they don't have birthdays.
Basically, one day they just show up on the scene out of nowhere?
Well, no. There's a person, I think, an advanced hybrid, who gets the apartment. Then one day, 3 young people move in, and or 2 young people move in, or one moves in. That's what I call an independent hybrid. Then comes a learning situation. For example, with an independent hybrid, there's a woman in the book who I use extensively named Betsy, and she had a hybrid who they don't have names, so she called him Jamie, but he works with other abductees also who call him different names. And she has to teach him. See, the thing is, if you've never had a birthday party, you don't know how old you are, you don't know anything about presents, you don't know anything about a birthday cake, you don't know anything about candles, you don't know anything about a party. You see what I mean? There's a whole effect that's there. It's the same thing with just babies who are born normally here, in that you don't have to explain to them what a stove is or what a refrigerator is. They already know that by the time they're a few months old. They get it. You know what I mean? They're not a few months, but let's just say several months old. They just do absorption of knowledge through their own eyes into their brain. They know what a spoon is. You know, they're being fed with a spoon. Everything has to be taught, Huberts. Everything. Now, this goes on board the UFO from the time that they're young children to the time that they move in here. They're being taught things. But it's not nearly enough of the literally millions of things that that normal kids here absorb just through observation. So when you take a young adult or an adult Hubert to a supermarket to teach them how to shop, the first thing you have to tell them is that they have to use a cart. And then they take stuff off the shelf and they put it in the cart. And they have to explain every item, like eggs. How do you eat eggs? Well, you can do this, you can do that, and what are eggs for, and that sort of stuff. But when they get up to the cash register, and the person behind the cash register says, "Hi, how you doing?" They can't remain silent. They have to say something in return, like, fine, whatever. They have to learn that. So abductees teach them all those sorts of things, including how to drive, including what stop signs mean and other signs. They have to learn everything. It's a long job, but these are unbelievably smart beings. They retain. They have fantastic memories. They learn everything once. You don't have to teach them twice. They absorb knowledge very quickly. Their neurology is different than ours in terms of learning and in terms of communicating and in terms of controlling. And this is not good for us, in my opinion. So, but that's what abductees spend their time doing if they're in the tract of teaching Huberts. Now, not all abductees do that, but a lot do, and a lot more are doing now that they're integrating into the society. So the whole situation is something that, back in the 60s, I really loved exploring UFOs. I mean, when I went to graduate school in 1966, I joined the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and I subscribed to Flying Saucer Review from England, the best UFO magazine in the country, and I was a member of NICAP and all that sort of stuff, and it was wonderful. It was great. I was thrilled by it. I thought this was going to be contact with another civilization who could teach us things, who would one day there'd be a mass landing, and and they would be friendly and good and maybe even benevolent, but certainly we would learn from them and all that stuff. And it was just thrilling to me. when I got into the inside the shells of objects, inside the walls of those objects that people had been seeing, then things began to take a change that I did not expect. And once I realized that this was a program, that it was goal-directed, that they were doing something here for a reason, and then I began to figure out what the reason was, I began to dislike it. I began to fear it. This is not what I paid for. You know what I mean? This isn't what I bought in for. This is different. And yet people just kept saying things like this over and over again, and I became convinced that this is not in our best interest. This is in their best interest. So when they talked about the change and how soon there was going to be a great change, soon everyone would be happy, soon everyone would know its place, the everyone, I think, was them, not us. They're going to be very happy when the change comes, or when the change is over with, or whatever the change may be. Maybe, you know, in pushing hybrids and hubris into the society is not the change. I'm not sure yet, but the point is that I really wound up fearing this phenomenon and thinking, oh my God, this is. I would have been a happier person being ignorant.
Do you think
so there you are.
Do you think a lot of us or a lot of people are abducted in our sleep and don't even realize we're missing any time?
Yes. The majority of the cases that I've looked at, it was 11 or 50 cases, take place when a person is not asleep. So, but because a lot of debunkers say it's sleep paralysis, and the answer is no. They don't know the evidence, and they don't know what sleep paralysis is. And I've had people who've had sleep paralysis, and they know the difference between being abducted and having sleep paralysis immediately, right away. But people don't remember it because it's clandestine. And by the time they return from the UFO, let's just say they're abducted on a UFO, the returning business is when they forget. It's literally a matter of seconds. The memory is stored somewhere in their mind that cannot be acquired by short-term memory. So the short-term memory is just gone, just in terms of what happened to them. And the reason is because these beings are really good in neurological conditioning. They're really good at neurology, really excellent. And so most people spend their entire lifetimes having odd experiences. They see dead people standing by their bed. They see religious figures, angels, demons, whatever. They have odd junctures in time and space. They're on one side of the street one time, and then suddenly they're standing on the other side of the street, and they don't remember crossing the street. And he realizes an hour and a half later or something like that, you know. And they say, oh, well, I must have, I just maybe forgot or something. Oh, well, I'll just go about my business and not even think about it. And because this is a clandestine phenomenon, as I said, without that secrecy, and without that secrecy being amazingly successful, there would be no abduction phenomenon. We'd find a way to stop it.
There are some people who actually claim that they've woke up in the middle of an abduction and they can remember details, but they're not sure if it's a dream or if it really happened to them.
Right. And those are the people who, if it bothers them enough, if there's enough, if they can't lead their lives properly and all that because they're bothered by bleed-through memories, those are the ones who I prefer to see rather than people who don't know anything and just are curious to find out what's going on. Because once you realize that you've been involved with the abduction phenomenon all your life, everything changes. You're making a change that is permanent for the rest of your life, and you can't go back on it. And I'm not in the business of changing people's lives just for a thrill. So I only deal with people who are really. Who it's interfering with their normal lives, and they're remembering these things that happened at night, and they know something's going on, and it's happening to their children too, who will see a picture of a gray alien. They're 5 years old on television. They say, "Mommy, that's the one who comes in through my window," stuff like that. And I don't work with kids. I don't work with anybody below the age of 21, and preferably older. But they know something is going on.
I think a lot of the problem with that is these kids that claim that these things have happened to them. Us as parents, we try to debunk everything that our kids say. Like,
Right.
there's a man in my room, or there's something under my bed, or something in my closet. When in fact, these kids are really going through these things and they're witnessing these things. But we as parents, there's no such thing. You don't even see that. It's not happening to you. It's all in your head. And I think that we teach our children not to believe what we see and what we hear and what we experience. But I believe, in fact, that they're really experiencing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing to do is to not say, no. You could say, well, that's very interesting. Sometimes, we just can't help what's going on, or just don't deny what they're saying. Just say it's interesting. You don't know what it is. The thing is that you don't want them to say they're being abducted by aliens when they get into grammar school, because we've had this happen before, and the teasing is relentless. They will be teased. They will be called an alien. It will go on and on. It will never stop. We've had people take their kids out of school and another school because of that. They have to learn to not say anything, even if they think it's happening to them. And so you can't, all you can do is listen to them, affirm that they're okay, that everything turned out okay, and it might not have been a dream. You don't want to deny it totally and completely. By the time they're 11 years old, or 12 years old, or 12 and a half or something, they will begin to forget everything normally, just like all the other abductees do. And so that's why hundreds of abductees write to me all the time and say, when I was 12 years old, I was abducted. When I was 9 years old, I was abducted. But, nothing ever happened since then. And I've heard this just hundreds and hundreds of times. And I know that it's a lifelong situation. But I know that for some reason or another that I do not know, kids remember more. They have more bleed-through memories than adults do, and the change of it comes around the age of between 11, 12, or around then, when their brains organize, I think, fully, more completely as adult-type brains than before. That's the only way I can look at it, and I'm probably wrong. But the fact is, though, that you want to be very careful that, for people out there who are abductees and have children who are abductees. You want to be very careful about how you deal with the subject with your kids, because you don't want them to live in fear.
Absolutely.
For one thing, for themselves.
I went through that as a child. I mean, I saw figures in my room and heard voices and things like that. But when I'd say to my mother, I don't know what's in my room, but it's creepy. And she'd say, just tell it to be quiet and leave you alone. You're going to bed. She never told me it's not there and don't be stupid. It's ridiculous. Or you watch too many movies. She never said that. And in my adult life, I mean, my father passed in in October of last year. And my father's still around, and he does these things that I know when he's here. I mean, he lights things up and he writes things on my computer, and he just does things that you can't help but to that he's here, because they're unexplainable in any other way. So I was never taught at a young age to shut it off. I was always just told, well, whatever's in your room, tell it to leave you alone. You're tired.
That's a pretty good way of approaching this subject for young kids. Actually, it's not bad. You just, that's fine. It seems to me. I once had help in this area. I went to a psychologist who I knew, and I asked him, how do you deal with it? And he told me basically what I said. That not that I invented it. He told me what to say, and so I mean what to tell abductee adults, and but what he didn't know was that some kids will automatically see things on television. They'll tell people that these aliens are coming into their rooms, and that can be difficult. You want your kids to grow up normally, regardless of what's going on. You want them to have all the normal aspects of human life that they possibly can, without having to fear or worry about aliens or things like that. They can do that later when they get older.
I agree, but for me, sometimes it's stuff that even as a child you can't ignore. I mean, you can't deny that it's happening to you. And I think that there's so many people out there who just do not want to face the fact that this stuff does happen and there's paranormal going on around us. And there's so many people who are so afraid of it or so against ever admitting anything about it that, it becomes, like you said, everybody teases you or people get mad at you because how could you say such lies? And it's, once you've actually experienced these things, it's not a lie in your life. That's real. It's something you very much experienced. And I think this day and age, a little bit more people are starting to wrap their heads around it because it's happening so much more often.
Well, I hope in terms of the general population, I hope you're right. But the way I look at it is I want to protect young people as much as possible. I want them to have normal lives. I want them to get married normally. I want everything to be normal. I prefer to work with people who have settled family life, and I don't want them to think, well, I'm never going to get married because I'm an abductee and my kids will be abductees if I have kids. I don't want that to happen. I want them to lead a normal life like all humans are supposed to live, and I think that they can deal with it later. Now, that's just me, and I have dealt with people who are very young, but 21 or so, but they all knew. They already had knowledge of it. One was the son of a woman named Allison Reed in the book, who knew right away what was going on, and he used to. When he reached the age of 21, 22, I started working with him for a short time. But it's unusual for me. It's unusual for me. I'm not in the business of ruining people's lives. I just don't think that's what I should be doing, And the best thing to do is to not say no for kids, is to not deny it. And you can say, well, sometimes you can say, sometimes I wish I could protect you, but you catch a cold, you catch the flu, and there's nothing I can do, and yet you turn out okay, and everybody turns out all right, and that sort of stuff, and things like that, I suppose.
Very true. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule to come on here and chat with us about all this. I know you've got something that you've got to do this afternoon, and I have another interview at 4. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk with us. For me, this is very interesting. And like I said, I mean, everywhere I turn on the internet, everybody is talking about UFOs and abduction. And, it's such an interesting thing right now. And I'm just thankful that you took time out of your busy schedule to share with us what you've learned. And thank you. And I hope to have you back on again.
Well, thank you for having me. In the first place, I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you to take your time to come on. This was a phenomenal interview. And like I said, that's why I do the stuff I do. It's why I do these interviews, so that people can learn things out there. And this was definitely, I learned a lot in this 1 hour. I learned a lot. And I study into this stuff. I love it. So I've learned a lot.
If you read Walking Among Us, far as I can go with the abduction phenomenon now, and people have told me it's the scariest book they ever read, and I think to myself, gosh, that's not something that I expected, because I've been so immersed in it for so long, that I don't normally think of that reaction as the scariest book I ever read, but to me it was just sort of the whole thing is horrible and frightening, of course, but I've been in it for so long that I've just overcome that, and I just don't. Maybe I should have made it less scary by having less transcripts in it. I don't know.
I'm looking forward to reading it, definitely. Can you give us your website and how to purchase your books?
Sure. The website is UFO Abduction. No S. It's not plural, just singular. UFOabduction.com. And the book is available. You can click through it, a couple of clicks on my website, or you can just go. It goes to Amazon.com, or you can just go straight to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or wherever. And it's actually in some books, I've been told, but who knows?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to picking that up. I want to read that.
Well, okay. Thanks a lot. Do appreciate it.
Thank you, and you have a great day.
Talk to you later then.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
That, you guys, was a very fun, phenomenal interview. I absolutely love these interviews. I love my guests and the conversations, and this is a lot of fun, you guys. It was definitely fun. Well, that's all we have time for today. We post our shows on YouTube, and if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, please feel free to visit our info2rail webpage. Just Google info2rail and click on our Google Sites page. It has our upcoming guests, and it has all the links to our past guests' websites. Our YouTube has all of the shows that I've done. And I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, each and every one of you, for joining us here at info2rail. If it wasn't for the guests and the listeners, like I tell you guys every week, I wouldn't be able to do what I love to do. So I just want to take that time, and I want to thank you so much for your support and for tuning in. I hope to see you here each and every week. We've got another interview coming up later today with Marshall Masters, and 2 on Friday as well. So we've got a lot to bring you now that the winter months are coming in and everybody's settling in to do interviews. So hope you'll stay tuned and check them out. May God bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.